We off?
30 seconds of carefree bliss.
Oof, like wind in your hair carefree.
Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree.
Yes!
Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree.
He's on a roll now.
Spit toothpaste on the faucet.
You got it. You got it.
Peanut butter on the light switch.
Oh, spritz, spritz.
Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
This episode is brought to you by Nerds Gummy Clusters, the sweet treat that always elevates the vibe. With a sweet gummy surrounded with tangy, crunchy nerds, every bite of Nerds Gummy Clusters brings you a whole new world of flavor. Whether it's game night, on the way to a concert, or kicking back with your crew, unleash your senses with Nerds Gummy Clusters.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rebecca Larson. Lady Jane Franklin and Lady Hester Stanhope, two trailblazing women of the 19th century, defied societal norms with their adventurous spirits and intellectual curiosity. Lady Jane, wife of Arctic explorer Sir John Franklin, became renowned for her relentless search for her husband's lost expedition. Her determination and resilience in the face of uncertainty became legendary. Meanwhile, Lady Hester, niece of Prime Minister William Pitt, left England in 1810 to explore the Mediterranean and Middle East, becoming the first Englishwoman to enter the Great Pyramid. Both women left lasting legacies as pioneers, challenging the expectations of their time and inspiring future generations. Lady Jane Franklin's life was shaped by curiosity and adventure long before she became the devoted wife of an Arctic explorer. Born in London in 1792 to John Griffin, a prosperous silk weaver, and Mary Gillimard, Jane grew up in a household that encouraged learning and travel. Educated both at home and at a small boarding school in Chelsea, she developed a keen intellect and a taste for adventure. Her friendship with the poetess Eleanor Ann Porten, the first wife of John Franklin, brought her into the orbit of the man who would later become her husband. Tragically, Eleanor died in 1825, just 6 days after Franklin embarked on his second Arctic overland expedition. When he returned in 1827, grief-stricken but determined to continue his work, he rekindled his acquaintance with Jane and her family. By November 1828, the two had quietly married, and their union built on mutual respect and a shared love of discovery. Just 5 months later, Franklin was knighted, and Jane stepped into the role of Lady Franklin with grace and determination. But marriage did nothing to curb her wanderlust. Jane had spent much of her youth traveling across Britain and the continent with her widowed father and companions. And as Lady Franklin, she continued to explore the world with an insatiable curiosity. Her journals, meticulously kept, brimmed with observations and reflections on the places she visited, revealing a sharp mind and a relentless desire to understand the world around her. While her husband commanded a frigate in the Mediterranean between 1830 and 1833, Jane Franklin was not content to remain idle. Instead, she set off on her own bold adventures, journeying across North Africa, Syria, and Asia Minor, regions few European women of her time dared to explore. Her insatiable curiosity and fearless spirit only grew stronger when Franklin was appointed governor of Van Diemen's Land, now Tasmania. There she embraced the challenges of colonial life, determined to leave a lasting cultural impact. She championed education, the arts, and scientific exploration, pushing against the rigid expectations placed upon women in her position. Ever eager to chart new territory, she defied convention by traveling overland from Melbourne to Sydney, an arduous trek rarely attempted by women, and later ventured through New Zealand, eager to experience its landscapes and peoples firsthand. Yet even as Jane pursued her own adventures, she remained deeply invested in her husband's ambitions. Upon Franklin's return to England in 1844, he was nearly 60, but his passion for exploring remained undiminished. Determined to secure one final command, he lobbied successfully for leadership of a naval expedition to chart the elusive Northwest Passage. In May 1845, he set sail aboard Erebus and Terror, with provisions meant to sustain the crew for 3 years. But as time stretched on with no word from the expedition, concern turned to alarm. By 1848, 5 search missions had been dispatched, and year after year, more expeditions set out in hopes of finding answers. The mystery of Franklin's fate consumed Jane, who became the driving force behind these relentless efforts. It was not until 1854 that Dr. John Ray, traveling near King William Island, uncovering chilling details from the local Inuit, accounts of starvation, exposure, and desperate measures taken by the doomed expedition. The news was devastating, but even then, Jane refused to give up. For her, Franklin's legacy was not one of loss, but of unyielding perseverance in the face of the unknown. Lady Franklin refused to surrender to uncertainty. In the face of skepticism, dwindling resources, and the passage of years, she became the driving force behind the search for her husband's lost expedition. Between 1850 and 1857, she personally financed 5 search trips, often at great personal cost, and lobbied tirelessly to rally international support. Her unwavering determination placed her at the heart of Arctic exploration, where her deepening knowledge of the region's geography rivaled that of most experienced navigators. Trusting in Franklin's discipline and the orders he had been given, she predicted his likely route with uncanny accuracy. Insights matched, if at all, only by the Arctic expert, Dr. Richard King. By 1857, with the mystery still unresolved, Lady Franklin once again took matters into her own hands. At her own expense, she commissioned the small but sturdy yacht Fox, placing it under the command Francis Leopold McClintock, an explorer as relentless as she was. The final, desperate expedition set sail in search of survivors, records, and any tangible proof of what had befallen Franklin and his men. 3 years later, Fox returned, bearing the heartbreaking truth. Among the recovered relics was a written record confirming Franklin's death in 1847. The document also revealed that his men, abandoning their icebound ships in 1848, had made a final, doomed attempt to reach safety via the Back River. Later searches confirmed their tragic fate. One by one, they had perished, leaving behind only scattered bones and silent remains of their struggle against the Arctic's relentless grip.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're gonna love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
With new McValue at McDonald's, you always get more than you expect every day. So even if gas prices go up, you can buy a double cheeseburger and add a McChicken for $1. Or before game time, you can get $5 meal deals for the group. And if breakfast is about to end, get deals in the app to save before the bell. The choice is yours, and the choice with McValue is always more.
Prices and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value. Must opt into rewards for app deals.
Even after years of heartbreak and unanswered questions, Lady Franklin found solace in the one pursuit that had always stirred her spirit: exploration. Accompanied by her devoted niece and secretary, Sophia Craycroft, she embraced travel as a means of healing. In 1860, an invitation from Henry Grinnell, the generous New York merchant who had supported the Franklin search efforts, provided the perfect opportunity. Having visited North America once before in 1846, Lady Franklin eagerly returned, stepping onto American soil once more in August to a warm and enthusiastic reception. From New York, their journey carried them north to Montreal, where they were welcomed with near-royal fanfare, their reception rivaling even that of the visiting Prince of Wales. They pressed on, taking in the breathtaking scenery of Quebec, before winding their way through Ottawa, Kingston, Toronto, and Hamilton. Their wanderlust led them to the Pacific, boarding a ship bound for San Francisco by way of Cape Horn. By early 1861, Lady Franklin and Sophia had reached the rugged frontiers of British Columbia, disembarking at the Esquimalt on February 24th. Among their fellow Britons, Lady Franklin found a rare sense of ease and belonging. "Once more among our own people only," Sophia later wrote, after many months of residence with Americans, a subtle nod to her aunt's well-known aversion to American accents. Their explorations in Victoria extended for over a month, during which they embarked on a daring expedition up the Fraser River. They first traveled by boat, then in canoe paddled by 12 local indigenous men, navigating the river's treacherous currents. As they passed through a narrow canyon, they caught sight of a makeshift banner strung across the gorge, emblazoned with the words "Lady Franklin Pass," a spontaneous tribute from the citizens of Yale, though the name would not endure. From California, their insatiable curiosity led them even further afield, to the lush islands of Hawaii, the storied lands of Japan, and the vast landscapes of India. Lady Franklin's later years became a tapestry of travels, each journey another chapter in a life driven by discovery, resilience, and an unyielding devotion to the memory of the husband she had lost to the Arctic's icy grip. In October 1865, whispers of an astonishing possibility reached Jane Griffin's ears. Rumors that Charles Francis Hall, drawing on Inuit accounts, had uncovered evidence suggesting there might still be survivors of Franklin's doomed expedition. The news ignited in her the same relentless determination that had guided her for decades. She felt compelled to meet Hall in person, to hear from his own lips what he had discovered. 4 years passed before the opportunity arose. By September 1869, when she learned of Hall's return from King William Island, carrying relics from Franklin's men, she and Sophia resolved to find him. Their paths, as ever, was neither simple nor direct. Opting for an adventurous route, they set off once more, rounding Cape Horn, pausing in San Francisco, and then embarking northward on the Newborn in late April 1870. After a brief but heartfelt reunion with friends in Victoria, they pressed on to Alaska, arriving in Tongass on May 10th and continuing to Sitka 2 days later. There they lingered for a month, observing the nascent days of American rule over the territory. Sophia, ever the meticulous chronicler, captured their experiences in a 16-page letter and an illustrated journal, offering a rare glimpse into Alaska's transition from Russia to American hands. Their wanderings led them next by rail to Salt Lake City, where they could not resist indulging in pointed critiques of the Mormon way of life. Much to Sophia's amusement, none other than Brigham Young himself appeared to meet them, a visit that, she suspected, was as novel for him as it was for them. At last they reached Cincinnati, then New York, where their long-sought meeting with Hall finally took place. No written account of the conversation survives, but one certainty remains. Hall, already preparing for an audacious expedition to the North Pole, likely assured them that he would return to King William Island to resume the search. Whether he truly believed there were survivors or merely wished to appease Lady Franklin is unknown. But for her, the possibility, no matter how remote, was reason enough to press forward, never willing to let the final chapter of Franklin's fate be closed too soon. Even in her 80s, Lady Franklin's unwavering passion for Arctic exploration showed no signs of fading. In 1875, as Britain prepared yet another attempt to reach the North Pole, she followed every detail of George Strong Nares's expedition with great interest. But it was Alan Young's proposed search for Franklin's lost records that captured her heart. Even as time slipped away from her, she clung to hope that some final clue to her husband's fate might still be uncovered. On the 18th of July, 1875, Lady Franklin passed away, ending a life defined by courage, perseverance, and an unrelenting quest for truth. She was laid to rest in Kensal Green Cemetery, alongside her beloved sister, Lady Mary Simpkinson. Yet her legacy endured, not only in stone and inscription, but in the lasting story of Arctic exploration. Forever linked to the frozen frontier she and her late husband sought to understand. Similarly, Lady Hester Stanhope, born in 1776 into a politically connected family, rose to prominence as the hostess of her uncle, Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger, at Walmer Castle. Following his death in 1806, she found herself at a crossroads, but was assured a secure future by a generous pension of £1,200 from King George III. Despite this financial stability, Lady Hester felt constrained by the limitations of British society. In 1810, she left behind her life in England, embarking on a journey that would take her across Europe and the Middle East, into the heart of ancient history. Her travels were marked by boldness and adventure. She made headlines as the first Englishwoman to enter the Great Pyramid, a feat that set her apart from her contemporaries. But it was just the beginning. After her ship was wrecked off the coast of Rhodes, Lady Hester adopted a daring new persona, disguising herself as a man to navigate the complexities of her situation. Her thirst for knowledge and discovery led her deep into Palestine, where she began excavations in search of ancient treasures. As she traveled through the ruins of Palmyra, she seemed a modern explorer, uncovering the mysteries of lost civilizations. By 1814, Lady Hester found a place that felt like home in the village of Jaune, nestled high on Mount Lebanon. There, she began to settle into a new role, one of power and influence. The British press dubbed her the Queen of the Desert, an echo of the ancient warrior queen Zenobia, the last ruler of Palmyra. Her presence commanded respect, and her intellect and courage were widely admired by those who encountered her. However, despite her newfound power and respect, her life was not without its struggles. Under the capitulations regime, the Ottoman Empire relinquished jurisdiction over British subjects, leaving their legal matters in the hands of British consular authorities. Yet when it came to Lady Hester's financial troubles, her debts were piling up. By 1834, they had grown so significant that Egyptian authorities were forced to intervene. They contacted Colonel Campbell, the British consul in Cairo, requesting his assistance in ensuring that Lady Hester's creditors were paid. The matter, complicated by Lady Hester's high social standing and the delicate balance of international diplomacy, soon escalated. Colonel Campbell, recognizing the sensitive nature of the situation, understood the political implications of becoming entangled in her affairs. However, when the British government informed him that they could not directly intervene, it only added to the mounting pressure. By 1837, the situation had become even more awkward. The Egyptian authorities were growing impatient, and the British Foreign Office found itself in a position it had hoped to avoid. When the Egyptian minister pointed out that in other cases, those involving British subjects, justice was swiftly administered, the British were forced to confront the double standard. The implication was clear. Their inaction over Lady Hester's debts was embarrassing, and something had to be done. Lady Hester, however, would not take kindly to this interference. As the British government pressured her to settle her debts, she responded with a series of letters that would only serve to escalate the situation. Her first target was none other than Queen Victoria herself. With a forceful tone, she declared, "My family has been loyal to Britain," and demanded the respect she felt she was owed. She went on to express her outrage at being dragged into what she considered a bureaucratic affair. To her, this was not about finances. It was a matter of honor. In the same breath, she wrote to the Duke of Wellington, chastising him for involving himself in what she deemed her private affairs. "Your queen had no business to meddle in my affairs," she wrote defiantly, underscoring her deep resentment at the intrusion. She explained that her debts had arisen not out of recklessness, but from her noble efforts to support the poor, particularly during the Syrian peasant revolt of 1834, when she had issued protections to over 70 individuals. As Lord Palmerston, the Foreign Secretary, attempted to step in with a more conciliatory tone, Lady Hester's response only deepened the rift. He had written to assure her that his government only sought to spare her the embarrassment of a trial before the Ottoman courts, but his attempt at diplomacy backfired. Lady Hester saw it not as an act of kindness, but as an imposition, an attempt to control her life. Her refusal to accept their terms was resolute. In the years that followed, Lady Hester's once vibrant life began to fade. The bold, confident figure who had so often stood alone in the midst of the Middle East now withdrew into isolation. The pressure of mounting debts and the continued interference from British authorities took its toll. Her eccentricity, once celebrated, gave way to a quieter existence. In one final act of defiance, she threatened in a letter to entomb herself within her home if her name was not publicly cleared. Whether she ever went to such extremes is unclear. There are no records suggesting she physically sealed herself away, but she certainly became reclusive. Lady Hester passed away on the 23rd of June, 1839, in Jean, leaving behind a legacy of both admiration and controversy. Despite the financial turmoil that marred her final years, she had lived a life that defied expectations. A woman of extraordinary courage, intellect, and independence, she had carved her own path through the world, refusing to bow to the expectations of any one nation or society. Her reputation as the Queen of the Desert and the woman who made history in the Middle East would outlast her, ensuring that she would remain one of history's most fascinating and complex figures. Lady Jane Franklin and Lady Hester Stanhope proved that adventure and discovery were not solely reserved for men. Their journeys, shaped by courage and unyielding pursuit of knowledge, have etched their names into history. Through their tenacity, they shattered barriers, expanded the limits of women's roles in society, and left behind powerful legacies that continue to inspire those who dare to venture beyond the known. Their stories remind us that true exploration is about more than just geography. It's about challenging the boundaries of what's possible. And that concludes another episode of the Tudors Dynasty podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you love the show and would like to show your support, consider becoming a patron over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Tudors Dynasty. Over there, you'll get commercial-free episodes, early access, and some patron-exclusive content as well. If you would prefer to show your support in another way, head on over to my website, tudorsdynasty.com, and click on the shop to see some of the new merchandise that I have available. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.